I'd like to take a minute to recognize this beautiful land on which we gather is the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Silks Okanagan peoples who have been here for thousands of years. Hey everyone, I'm so excited that you're all here. I'm so excited that we have so many people interested in contributing to the organization in some way. Anyway, that's fantastic. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Stacey. I'll be your host for the evening. We know that you probably have a lot of questions about the organization. We hope you've had the chance to check out our website and get a feel for what we do. But if not, we're open to discussing all kinds of topics, such as our membership, community partners, and programs. So please feel free to ask us anything, but please ask only about the organization, no personal or questions relating to board departures, as those would go against our confidentiality policy. So once I open the floor for questions, please raise your hand or use the hand icon to get our attention and introduce yourself. We want to be able to get to know everybody. So there are a couple of reasons why we are here today. First of all, we're excited to announce that we'll be working with Patricia Huntsman on our community services recovery project. She also has some information to share regarding how the role of arts councils have changed in the last few years. Patricia is a two-time nationally award-winning cultural strategist. She has worked across Canada and internationally in senior roles in the creative industry for over 25 years. Her BC-based team practice offers a full roster of arts management, cultural policy writing and planning, and communication services tailored to building communities through culture. How awesome and how exciting this is going to be. Thank you so much, Patricia, for being here tonight. Secondly, we are urgently seeking new board members. If you can commit to 2 years to assist with the continuity of the organization, we would love to have you on our team. We're looking to fill the following executive positions of president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, as well as directors. And thirdly, we have an open position for managing director. If you are a friendly, mature, reliable, well-organized person who is comfortable with being a community leader and who is committed to reconciliation, equity, diversity, inclusion, and access, we'd love to talk to you about this position. Please send us your application right away if you haven't already. We are conducting interviews next week. Alrighty, I'm going to let our panel introduce themselves so you know a little bit about us. So please, panel, please tell the group who you are, your position, maybe a little bit about what you do or what you enjoy about your position. So we will start with Brad. He's our treasurer. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, thank you. I've been involved with the Arts Council for quite a long time now. I can't say how many years because it's been a lot, but I've enjoyed my time with the Arts Council. I'm a big supporter of the arts in all its forms. I'm an artist myself, not a fabulous one, because just another starving one, like most of us artists are. But I believe that communities that embrace and promote the arts are way healthier communities than ones that don't. I'm a firm believer that the Arts Council does many things in all the programs that we do that supports the arts and gets more and more of our young people or seniors involved in arts that haven't been involved before. So I would strongly suggest that if you're interested in the arts and promoting the Arts Council is a great place to start. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Brad. And we will move on to Michaela, who is here from Victoria. And it's hot out there too.
It is definitely hot out here. Hi, everyone. I'm Michaela. I'm zooming in from Lekwungen territory, also known as Victoria, BC. I'm here back in grad school, and I'm also working at the Royal BC Museum. While on the island, I'm also serving as the vice president of the provincial art service organization, Arts BC. I lived in Penticton for a few years, where I worked as the collections manager at the Penticton Art Gallery, and later as the operations and development coordinator of the Arts Council. And I've been on the board here off and on for about 3.5 years now. And my favorite thing about the Arts Council is all the work that we do with our community partners and making art accessible to everybody in our community. And I'm happy to be on the board from afar.
Thank you so much, Michaela. I have to agree with you. One of my favorite things, one of the many favorite things about the Arts Council for me is the community outreach programming like Artsy Aging with Alice, which focuses on our senior population. And of course, the Artists in Residence program. It's also one of my favorites, but I could go on and on and on talking about how awesome the Arts Council is. Again, my name is Stacy. I do a little bit of everything from chairing board meetings to fundraising and more. And I wish I could do way more, but here I am today asking for help from other people as well. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Let's move along to Bethany.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here tonight and to see everybody who's here. I really appreciate you coming out. My name is Bethany Hanfield, and I've been the administrator at the Arts Council since 2019, but I've actually been part of the Arts Council since 2006. When I first moved to the Okanagan, and I was actually on the board around that time. I've been an exhibiting artist at the Lear House many times, and I've also been an art instructor. So I really kind of had a really full rounded picture of what the Lear House was and what the Arts Council was before taking on this position as administrator. Over the past couple of years, it's been really interesting, of course, with the pandemic and everything else, but you know, we've really grown and expanded what our Arts Council does. We've created a ton of new partnerships. We've gotten a lot more grants, a lot more programs, and also we've brought more equity and diversity to the organization, which was one of my personal missions when I signed on, because I wanted to be sure that we really were putting the community in the Community Arts Council to make sure that it was really reaching as many folks as possible, especially because there is a lot of disparity in our community. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was something that was going to be addressed. And I'm hoping that with the new managing director position, whoever is hired for that they're also keen on these goals, and they are looking forward to the partnerships, continuing those, and then continuing that mission and mandate as well too. And for arts, what I love about it, it's everything. It's my whole life. It's embedded in all the things that I do. I mean, from being a professional artist myself to being on the administration side, just my love and passion for it. All of my friends are artists, you know, so I think that we make the world a better place. And I think over the pandemic, we saw how much the world came together through art practices, the connectivity that happened during that time. You know, I don't know how we would have gotten through that without the artists. So protecting them, supporting them as well too, is very important to me. So thank you all again for being here tonight, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Bethany. I've always believed that one of the main one of the main things about life is to appreciate art, because it's all around us, all over the place. So let's go on and hear from Patricia now.
Thanks very much, Stacy, and thank you for the earlier introduction. I'm joining everybody from Tisquote. And can everyone hear me just well enough? You just give me a thumbs up, okay? Normally I'd have my earbuds in, but I have a new puppy, and my puppy has gone through 2 sets of earbuds already, so I'm kind of hesitant to buy another pair. But I'm joining you from Tisquote, and Tisquote in the Hulkaminium language is known as the Big Island. So I am up north from Michaela, just outside between Nanaimo and Qualicum Beach, in what is known as Snanaos lands, which is Nanoose Bay. So it is also very, very hot here today. We're at about 32 degrees. I know it gets very hot in Penticton too. I've been there many times and have enjoyed being at the Lear House as well. I was also working with Arts BC at one point, and we had a fantastic conference in Penticton. So that was really enjoyable to get to know the organizations and the community organizations in that region as well. And I've been up quite a few times to do some professional development and board development and different workshops in Penticton. So always enjoy being there. Did you want me to start, Stacey, with my presentation at this point? Okay, that's great. And I'll just share my slides. If we can enable the sharing, that would be great. There we go. Thanks very much. So, well, first, I just want to get a sense of who's here. Do we have mostly artists joining tonight, or do we have people joining from other community organizations? Just wondering if maybe some people wanted to put their video on and just let us know, kind of gear things towards who I'm speaking with. Hi, Nicole.
Hi. So I have a background, like currently I work as an archivist.
Okay.
And I work remotely. My work is in Banff, Alberta, but I live in Naramata.
Okay.
So that's a kind of an interesting thing, kind of fun. But I have a background in arts. So I used to practice arts. I haven't in the last few years since I had a baby, and I'm just a bit too busy at this point. I'm really into heritage as well. So I feel like art, heritage, everything's kind of all encompassing for me. A lot of my practice in arts incorporated archival elements and stuff. And then I eventually kind of through education got to archives and then kind of fell into that. But having finally kind of settled down in Naramata, I feel like it's time to get back into the art community. And it's something that kind of I have a passion for, something I love. And yeah, I kind of think it should be in everyone's life, I guess. So that's me.
Nice to hear from you. I
Thank
just
you.
like to get a sense. I know some people have their cameras up, but just sort of get a sense of maybe who's in an an artist, or who's maybe with a community organization. Carmel.
Yeah, hi, my name's Carmel. I just moved to Penticton in April. I'm an artist. I'm an art jeweler, actually, so a studio jeweler, whatever. People never know what to call us. I don't really make that much wearable jewelry. I wear essentially make sculpture for walls. I have a long history of working in the arts and nonprofits, and just having moved here, I thought I was just interested in what the organization does. I became a member immediately. So just really curious to find out more about what's going on and how I can help.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, well, what I'll do, sort of not hearing from anybody else, not sure who else, or you can also throw it in the chat. Thanks, Joshua. Oh yeah, okay, tourism, loves it. Great to have community partners who understand the arts. It's fantastic. Thanks, Joshua. Wonderful. So what you're looking at here is, when I worked with Arts BC, I worked with arts councils all around the province. And what might interest you is that there are nearly like 400 arts councils all around the province. And there is an interesting sort of unique history to how arts councils sort of evolved and sort of where they are today. So I just wanted to kind of give you that context to share, because I think it's something that arts council is a word that sort of means different things to different people. And sometimes there's a bit of a generational difference in there too. And we just kind of have different expectations around what an arts council is. So recently I was actually just presenting, I was like, hey, wait a second. And when Bethany was like, back and forth with me, and I was like, wait a second, I just recently did this very same presentation to a council in Mission. So I sort of have a few slides here to just reference for you, but just one second. So I think what we need to really recognize in our sector is we need to be using our language correctly. The cultural sector as a whole is very much as tourism was sort of 25, 30 years ago, really coming into its own as a sector, getting much better at metrics, getting much better at evaluation, and getting much better at a consistency in use of language. And this is really important when we're working with other levels of government. So in terms of culture, and especially with cultural planning and cultural development, the work that an arts council does, where we align is actually with UNESCO. And every country around the world measures culture in a fairly consistent way. And what we include in our cultural sector are all of these sub-industries and subsectors. So you would see creative cultural occupations. This can be graphic design, this can be advertising, film, video game development, etc. Publishing, music publishing is in there, of course, and literary publishing. Festivals and events is the #1 form of arts and culture participation in Canada. And this represents a huge shift from if you started out in the arts, like say in the 90s, as I did, Canada Council, Canadian Heritage, BC Arts Council, it was all about artistic excellence. And if you were a first or second generation arts administrator in Canada, all of your grant writing, everything that you had to do in terms of who you were hiring in your organization, it had to be about artistic excellence. And with that, community arts councils kind of had this different role. It was like there was the professional disciplines up here, and there was community arts down here. Now, happy days, it's really shifted, and we're really good at what we do in bringing in community. And so there's been that big change from artistic excellence to being to community cultural development. And I'm going to touch on that in a little bit, but it also represents a shift in terms of what the public's expectations are in terms of arts participation. So it's less about an expert telling you something and more so about a way to feel part of the process, to feel part of an event, to feel like you're learning something for sure, but you're also, you're there, you're witnessing, you're interacting. So these are important pieces to kind of consider when we're talking about programming and when we're talking about the role of an arts council in a community. Other things that kind of surprise people from time to time are natural heritage and cultural heritage and intangible assets. As Michaela knows, because she's working at the Royal BC Museum, intangible assets are those things around folklore. This is really important to Indigenous people and Indigenous, obviously, keepers and knowledge holders and artistic practitioners and all of the cultural keepers. And those are the stories, those are the references of place, those are how we understand where we are in the world, those legends that can sometimes come out even from colonial history and other cultures who might be represented in your community. And the cultural heritage that is, of course, both our Indigenous and our colonial heritage in a defined geographic area, and our natural heritage. So what shapes us in terms of our land? Are we in a big prairie area? Are we next to the water? All of these things having a huge influence in our culture of who we are and how we live. So when we measure this in BC, we're nearing, I believe we're nearing 200,000 workers. We're at about 4% of our GDP. And it tracks nationally as well in terms of Canada's GDP. We're at 4%. And we're actually at 59 billion in terms of an industry. So there's more people working in our sector in Canada than there are people working in hospitals, than there are people working in agriculture. And traditionally our sector outperforms, and this is always staggering to people, but it outperforms fishery, agriculture, and forestry combined. But that's just the economic side of it. And it is an interesting thing to know and to realize just how much we've changed. And again, I go back to tourism, when we thought like 25, 30 years ago, tourism really coming into its own. And of course, today, we recognize how important tourism is, especially to traditionally resource-based communities and resource-based economies. And this is, of course, critical in an area like Penticton. So tourism is a really important partner to our cultural sector. But important sort of thing to note is that art is to culture as baseball is to sport. So art is actually a subset of culture, but of course, all of the learning that goes into artistic disciplines and arts forms leads up to all sorts of creative cultural occupations and to the cultural sector as a whole. So we're in here. Sometimes we own facilities as well. We sometimes have people from these subsectors working in with us. We often do a lot of festivals and events. we're often a lead in terms of building Indigenous relations and working in truth and reconciliation. So we have a really unique role in a community, in a defined geographic area in a region. So I'd like people to know, really understand and situate, where are we in our sector, and how do arts councils fit into that? Just scroll down here. So I mentioned earlier that there's a big shift in how arts councils have evolved. So most of them in BC, they're around the 40 to kind of 50-year mark in terms of the history of their organizations. But they started out primarily as visual arts organizations. They were kind of like sometimes the Sunday painters. It was mostly largely white women who got together and, hosted things in their community and brought exhibitions to spaces, and there was workshops and learning opportunities and training. But again, it primarily came out of the visual arts. And what we see, and this shift has really taken place over the last 5 to 10 years, it's really turned around. And what all of those sort of nearly 400 arts councils in the province, the big shift has been from working from a member-based orientation to community cultural development and arts-based community cultural development. And where that really stems from is most of those arts councils around the province are funded through the BC Arts Council. And the BC Arts Council has a community arts operating program. And so most of those arts councils receive money through operating. Sometimes it's just project grant funding that they're receiving. But there's been a big switch, and it's kind of a tricky thing because the BC Societies Act still has us, wanting to make sure that we're being accountable to members, just as we would shareholders if it weren't a charitable organization or nonprofit organization. But the big switch is that arts councils now take on this role of community cultural development. Sometimes in a local government, you'll have a cultural planner, you'll have a cultural manager, there's programming staff as well in that local government. But in many places around the province, it's actually the Arts Council that is doing all of that work. And so that is no longer just a frill or a nice to have. What we see is a big shift there, that arts councils are often like a key partner, just as you would have a destination marketing organization, or you'd have an economic development organization affiliated with your local government. Arts councils often have a fee-for-service agreement or some kind of MOU or operating agreement with their local government. So you'll see here that when cultural development, and especially the role of an arts council functioning out in its community, it helps with economic development. When you have an animated city that, with festivals and events, and there's artisans and there's farmers markets and there's artisans at the farmers market, etc. And there's programming through the winter, music, creative placemaking, kind of arts animation around the town. These all are big attractants, right? These are big creative assets in our community. And that's really the role that we serve. Now, some things that are really important to realize, though, is the context of the arts as a whole in BC is very different to other provinces. I grew up on the East Coast. I've worked at national level, and I've worked in Ontario. We're very well funded out there. BC historically received the least amount of the federal transfer for cultural dollars. That only began in 2018. And there's a real consequence to that deferred funding over decades, because keep in mind, these organizations are like 40, 50 years here in BC, right? So we're only seeing really the professionalization of our arts councils in the last 5 to 10 years. And when I say the professionalization, I mean hiring an executive director who's trained in arts administration, hiring programming staff who have a lot of experience in arts education, rounding out the capacity within the team, having board members who understand like the role of being like their governance duties, etc., and kind of going from a working board to a governance board, those sorts of characteristics. So there's a big shift in there. And another consequence of that deferred funding over all of those decades, and this sort of seeing the shift since 2017 between our federal government and our provincial government, is our arts infrastructure is so behind other provinces. So I recently did this survey of arts infrastructure provinces projects around the province. Like I just did this 2 months ago. A recent arts infrastructure project in BC is actually like 1999. And when we look in our communities, we are really, really underserved in terms of arts infrastructure, in terms of assets being maintained for arts and cultural activities, arts and cultural purpose. So when we think to our rec cousins or our rec brothers and sisters and sports brothers and sisters, they're really good at making sure that pool is on a maintenance cycle, that the tennis courts are on a maintenance cycle, that they have facility plans for their rec centers or what have you. We haven't quite had that, and we're trying to get there because, again, we're sort of becoming organized like we did, like the tourism sector did sort of 25, 30 years ago. So we're still playing a lot of catch up. Now, some organizations like this one are knocking it out of the park because they're doing so much in their community in terms of that arts based community development. So again, that BC Arts Council grant, it shifted quite a few years ago from being member focused, what are you doing for your members, so solely doing things for the arts community itself, so individual artists, to being what are you doing for the community as a whole using the arts. So that kind of shifts things a little bit. So it's not simply serving just the artists who are part of your membership. Your expectation now as an arts council is to be serving the community as a whole, welcoming people in, and making sure there's equitable access to the arts. That's a big switcheroo. So this organization has transitioned this, has done it really, really well. And there's many other organizations around the province who are going through this change. Some it's might, kind of 4 years ago, some it's only they're doing it now. There's a lot of catch up from some organizations, but this is like, it was such a fundamental shift. And I don't know that BC Arts Council really understood what impacts it was going to have on these organizations, because they had to do so many fundamental shifts within the actual structure of their organizations. So things like doing program reviews and evaluations are really timely, especially as you're growing so quickly. Another important thing to know about the role of arts councils in our province is many arts organizations, even professional organizations, thinking of theaters, etc., they've actually stayed in, when we look at the nonprofit life cycles, there's startup, there's growth, there's maturity, there's decline, and then there's turnaround. Many of them have never actually gotten out of the growth stage. And that's, again, that goes back to the lack of the core funding for these organizations that was deferred over so many decades. So there's a real, I hate to use jargony words like tipping point, but there is this sort of, you can kind of graph it, where capacity really is expanding, and you see programming expanding, you see all sorts of great things happening in service to the community, but the funding hasn't quite matched up. So you kind of have to step that out very carefully, otherwise you're going to implode. And a lot of arts organizations were just sort of seeing, they had top-up money through COVID funding, and for the first time, they were actually in a stable funding position, which is just wild, right? So for the first time, these organizations were like, well, maybe we'll work on a development plan, right? We've always been just dependent on grants and really primarily, but we can look at diversifying our revenue basis now. Like we can get that gift shop set up and running, and or we can do a coffee shop to get some earned revenues in, or all sorts of different things to kind of have that healthy financial pie, right? That's divided between our government funding, our donations, our earned revenue, and then our programming revenue as well. So and ticket sales, of course. So a lot of huge changes. One of the critical roles that an arts council has in its region or in its city is to be leading in cultural roundtables and bringing different groups together. So again, we want to have that ecosystems lens. So we want to be bringing our tourism partners in, our wellness partners in, our rec partners in, and festival partners and galleries and etc. Because we want to make sure that we're really approaching this from a holistic way, and other partners with the city. Now, sometimes what happens and this isn't slagging anybody, but it's some local governments, just like any other industry or any other kind of organization, they've gone through a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes that are needed. But what we see as a shift in BC is local governments understanding that arts and culture aren't a frill or a nice to have. They're increasingly being understood as a core suite of municipal service. So when your local government does kind of, the light bulb gets on, oh, hey, this is the secret sauce that really is the difference between us being a successful community or a failing community, because we can't just have tourism without stuff going on, right? We can't just have economic development without there being a really nice theater, because we're not going to attract workers here if there aren't these amenities, right? As some examples, we understand that the wellness factor of participating in arts, as we saw during COVID, is Bethany, or somebody mentioned earlier, and that it's like core to community planning. So we have this very strategic role to play in our communities, and it's really great when that gets recognized by local cultural leadership, but also to understand that sometimes in some communities, it takes a longer time for that cultural leadership to emerge and evolve. It's always fantastic though, when you have a strong board and great board members who can be those ambassadors out in the community and speak to the great work of an organization like this. So sometimes cultural leadership, it's coming from a variety of places, but ultimately you want to have really a nice board that really, after the fiduciary duties and governance duties of your board, really the core thing that board members need to do is to be able to speak about the organization and its good work. So that's my most important thing that I look for in a board member, that they can really articulate in their circles, whoever they're meeting with, about the work of the organization. So again, something to really recognize is just how profound that shift was from going from arts-based community development model to from that membership model, and just all that change that's ensued. But it's really good to see that the Penticton Arts Council has really navigated that change over the last 5 years. And I'll quickly wrap up here, because I know I'm running out of time. How much more time do I have? I need to quickly wrap up here. I just have a couple of other things that I wanted to share. Most importantly, many of these pieces are also broader context changes in our sector. Bethany spoke to the work that's being done in equity at the organization, making sure that accessibility arts are part of your work in terms of programming. We know that festivals and events being the #1 form of arts participation. All sorts of really important changes happening. The role of family arts, making sure that families and intergenerational participation can happen all at once. So we don't have our seniors program over here, our kids programming, that there's events that everybody can just show up to as a multi-generational family. Really important for new Canadians as well, coming into a community to have that kind of offering. So a lot of different considerations that are in the backdrop of the work of arts councils. And another one, of course, is digital strategies, and making sure that our organizations don't have everything in 8 different Excel spreadsheets, that there's CRMs, that we're modernizing the back end of our organizations to make sure that things are operating smoothly, and that, ticketing, purchasing paths are just 4 clicks, and that there's good engagement through social media, etc. So lots of big changes there. And then to just quickly wrap up, I spoke a lot about the economic impacts of arts councils, but kind of have this role that they play in their communities, and they really do help to build identity and pride. You'll see the rebranding of a lot of arts councils as Arts Whistler or Squamish Arts now, or the Salt Spring Arts, because we're really owning the identity piece around arts and culture in our communities, and we're often the lead for arts and culture in a community. So you'll see across the province, there's less, the society name would include, such and such district and community arts council, but the operating name of most of these organizations has actually been changed, and there's been a rebranding process that better aligns with kind of today's foundational statements of who we are and how we work. So lots of important things that arts councils do, those interpersonal ties, the volunteering. It even helps lower crime. Our work helps lower crime. Like, come on, we're really good. we do amazing things when we do it well. But I think what's really cool, especially for a place like Penticton, where you can do nearshoring, where you can do remote work, that is just fostering this creative milieu, and that in turn just spurs economic growth, and it just spurs like a well-being and a really cool vibe and a really great scene. So I'm happy to answer further questions about role of arts councils, but I'm really happy. I thought it was a super smart move that the Arts Council was pausing to just look at all of the programming and services that they're doing and say, okay, we need to right size this, and we need to make sure that what we're offering to the community really matches the capacity that we can deliver to a high degree over the next few years. So really smart to have taken up that work. So really, and happy to be part of it. So thank you very much for letting me join tonight. I'm sorry I went over my time. I often do this. Thanks, Bethany.
That's completely fine, Patricia. That was a lot of great information. I think we all benefited from that. Does anybody have any questions for her?
Yeah.
Any hands? Okay, nothing at the moment. If you have a question later, you can let me know.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. I'll just move on really quick to the information regarding joining our board of directors. The term is for 1 year, starting at the special board meeting, which is held immediately following the AGM on August 24th. So what you'll do is you'll attend monthly board meetings and participate in at least one working committee. The committees are fundraising/events, policy/HR, Learhouse, finance, Arts Matter program/exhibitions. At the monthly board meetings, there is something for everyone. You can brainstorm ideas, you can review budgets, you make sure that the organization is on track with their goals, fundraising ideas, more, so much more, all kinds of fun stuff. The board is fiscally responsible for the organization, and in order to function in compliance as a registered society, we must fill all executive positions at this AGM August 24th. So that is one of the reasons why we are here today. Are there any questions about joining the board? Go ahead, Nicole. You're on mute.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious about the executive roles and responsibilities. And I guess, like, what is the time commitment for that? I don't know a full-time commitment for just being a board member either, but I guess more pointedly at the executive positions.
The time commitment is really whatever you can, at least a meeting once a month. If you can, if you're available, you know, a little bit more than that to, what were we saying, Bethany? How many hours a month was it?
Well, yeah, it depends on the level of involvement. So, I mean, for the executive at the bare minimum, it's going to be probably, 2 hours a month, considering like maybe the meetings aren't usually more than an hour. And then if there's any kind of questions, they use the Slack channel for communication. So if there's any kind of questions that pop up over that, sorry, I just have to admit somebody. But then if you decide that you want to be on a committee, then that could obviously take up more time, depending what your committee is. The Learhouse is the most active committee. That the building requires a lot of support, maintenance and that type of things. So again, it depends on what you want to do on that committee. And so one of the things I was actually going to say as well too is that it would be great. The current board that we have now are all awesome and amazing folks, and they've been with us through COVID. Some of us, like Brad, have been with us for like a super long time, but everybody has a lot of other things happening in their world right now. So we haven't had an opportunity for dreaming and kind of like strategizing. So I'm hoping that something that this new board will be able to do is to take time to actually build out a strategic plan with staff and potentially, with some of our other community partners as well too. So that's something else that should be considered as part of the time commitment as well too. Another piece that we do as well too is advocacy. I don't know if you saw earlier this year when the Penticton Art Gallery had to go before the city of Penticton after receiving 50% funding cut. So that's just one example of where the Arts Council, especially somebody on the executive, may need to step up and maybe in an outreach type thing as well too. And then the folks on the executive also tend to be signatories. So on the 15th and then whatever the last day of the month is as well too, then they will be signing our online bills and payments. So I got to make sure you got time for that. But there's usually enough signatories to go around that people just share months and that type of thing. They'll put a little schedule together.
Thanks for that, Bethany. I just wanted to point out that quite a few people have introduced themselves in the chat. So take a minute to check that out. Thank you, everybody. Any other questions about joining the board? Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about like I guess the handoff, the consistency for the board, like having I don't know the Penticton Arts Council myself, and I'm new to the area. I've been on a board for an arts council before, but not here. And, so I'm just wondering, is there, I assume like admin will be there to help and stuff, but like to fill those new positions, is there going to be like a bit of I guess a booklet that we get, or how are we going to fit into a new board position if we are in that position, I guess?
There is going to be booklets and information and videos and websites and people and many people available to help out via email or Slack. Or you guys are not going to be alone. Absolutely not. Bethany, do you want to speak on that at all?
Yeah, and so I'm also going to be staying on for a short time as a consultant for the organization in that capacity. And we're creating a list as well of past board members, past presidents, and also other folks in our community like Paul Crawford, who's the curator of the Penticton Arts Council, that are willing to, not willing, but excited about, welcoming in the new board and supporting them in their new roles. So we definitely want to make sure that folks are never feeling adrift and that they know they always have somebody to call or to connect with. And on that list as well too, there'll be kind of like people's different areas of specialty or their experience. And then we encourage everybody to take the BC Museum's board training as well, if they haven't done that already. And then we've got wonderful folks at Arts BC. Michaela is our representative for our region, for the Thompson Okanagan. And they are a terrific resource. They have weekly roundtables. And Elliot Hart, who's there as well too, and their whole team, is just an amazing resource too. So we really want folks to know that there's always kind of a little bit of kind of getting to know what it is and different things to work out. And unfortunately, this is like probably the first time in our history where there's been such a dramatic change at one time. But the people will be supported in this transition. Oh, and somebody wrote something in the chat here. So Joshua wrote a little write-up here in the chat too, so definitely be sure to pop in and to read that as well.
Michaela also posted a link for Arts BC, so check that as well. There's so much information, and there will be so many lovely people hanging around. You won't be able to get rid of us, basically. Any other questions about joining the board? Going once, going twice, and okay, let's move on then. If you have any other questions, email me. That's totally fine. Stacy.frank@pentictonartscouncil.com is my email. I probably talked to quite a few of you already, but I'll put my email in the chat as I can highlight.
I just did.
Okay, thank you. A hard time doing it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we are going to move on to some more information about our open position for managing director, and Bethany is going to speak on that.
Okay, so just one moment while I do my share screen here. All right, okay. So the managing director position, it's a revisioning of the administrator position. And so we're kind of looking at all of the roles right now and revisioning them. So that's something that the new board and the managing director, they would finalize that piece with the current staff, but they're aware of that situation. I'm looking forward to it. So basically this position, it works with everybody. So you're working with the PDCA team, the board of directors, volunteers, all of our community partners. You know, you touch in on all the different aspects of what we do. But the main, sorry, I'm just going that really fast, but these are the main responsibilities. So outreach, so connecting, leading, and being present. So you're really looking for somebody who is comfortable being out in the community, representing the council, working with all of our community partners. And we have so many community partners now. I used to work at the South Okanagan Women in Need Society. So when I came to the Arts Council, I made sure to connect with all my folks back in social services so that the people that they served were also getting access to the arts programming and different things that we were offering. So I'd love for that to be continued. We're part of Aging Well Penticton, which is just in, it's getting into its 5th year now. And so this is for arts programming, or sorry, not just arts programming, but all types of different services for benefiting folks that are 55 plus. And the Arts Council delivers the creative arts portion of that. And so there's about 15 or so odd organizations that are part of that, that project. And so those are people that we'd be working with too. So fundraising, working with donors, special events, sponsorships. This is something that we haven't done a terribly ton with. We started doing wonderful online auctions with Michaela, which was so great. She was a huge success with helping us with that, and the current team's continuing with that right now. And Stacy started with the rock and roll fundraisers as well, which has been a ton of fun and a great way to get us out in the community and reach a different audience as well too. So that's not something that we've done traditionally a ton of, but we're really starting to get into that now. The main thing that we've been doing is working with grants. And I've raised the grant portfolio over $100,000 with my time at the council from 2018, that first year before I started, where they were sitting was around 64,000. And then now in our current year, I just got to pull up that number. We received 162,000. So that's 100,000, sorry. And so that's pretty exciting stuff. So you'll be working with our funders who are all amazing, but also researching other grants, writing them and then reporting on them as well, which also means, you know, knowing how to be able to capture those types of metrics that the funders are looking for in their reporting, creating budgets with the board, working with the bookkeeper and the account on payroll and different types of payments and bills. I actually was doing all of the bookkeeping, but I didn't want our new person to have to do that. So we've got a new person who's going to be doing the bookkeeping. So the majority of that is going to be off this person's plate. And then of course, working with the accountant on the year end, and then being, you know, supporting the board with, you know, talking about the finances, like what is this, making sure that they're always informed about where we are currently standing. And then from an administration standpoint, it's just managing the operations of the organization, you know, working with the team, making sure the records and memberships are being kept up. Yeah, and just making sure everything's running smoothly, and then liaising with all of the different committees, supporting them with any type of information that they're needing. And it's one of those positions where every day is something different. You never know who's going to walk through the door or what's going on. And but it's a lot of fun, and it's so great to see how the Arts Council over the years has opened up and become so much more welcoming to different folks. I think in 2019, in our fall exhibition, it was like one of the first times where we had like over like 50% of people. It was one of their first shows sorry, 50% of the people who were exhibiting, it was their first time in a show. And then we had a whole bunch of folks where it was their first time exhibiting at the Lear House. And so from that show onward, we're just trying to expand that reach more and more. And it means that we've redeveloped a lot of our programming. We used to have tenant artists, now we have the Artists in Residence program, and that's to ensure equity to this subsidized asset, which is the artist studio spaces. And then that also creates an artist community within the building itself as well. We also have changes to our exhibition series as well too. So now folks have to apply, and there's different kind of limitations on application, different ways that we kind of not mark them, but maybe score on them as well too, to ensure that, you know, it's a wider, more equitable framework for people who are showing. And yeah, so the team is really fantastic. They couldn't be here tonight, but they're really wonderful to work with. And then every summer we get terrific Canada Jobs youth as well too, to help out in our busier months. So yeah, it's a wonderful artistic community to work in. And I'm really looking forward to the next person that comes on board, because I know they're going to have a really great time. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And then if anybody's got any questions for me, you can raise their hand or put it in the chat.
Stephanie is right. It really is a community and a team effort. There isn't one person does this and one person does that, and they do it alone. Everybody works on everything together, and the board is really involved, and the staff is involved, and it's truly an artistic community. It's quite lovely. Any questions for Bethany on that?
Oh, and something else I really quickly want to mention too is we don't work under a hierarchy. We work under a circle of responsibility. So the board are not our boss for the office. Everybody is task oriented. So somebody might have a specific task, but it doesn't place them higher than anybody else within the office structure. And that includes the staff as well too. Everybody's input is equally valued. And though we can't always do things where it's, I'm sorry, I've just totally lost the word for what it is, full consent for everything. We try to ensure that everybody's point of view is measured and reflected. And, you know, we've made some changes for different things a lot of the time based on staff input. One of the biggest examples that I can share is the way that we did the labeling and everything for our exhibitions. Emily Mosley, who's one of our Canada Summer Jobs youth, came in, I think in 2020, and she saw how we were doing the Potter Show, which has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little tiny pieces of pottery. And she said, this is nonsense. This is a much better way to do this thing. And that's how we do it now. And that's how we like to do everything. If somebody presents information that will make us a better organization, we're going to listen to that. And it doesn't matter where it comes from, because all voices are heard at this Arts Council. And here, Haley, you've got a question.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the information that's been presented so far. You guys are doing a wonderful job tonight, and I really appreciate all of the clarity that you guys have provided. My main question for tonight in regards to the managing director position is this going to be offered in a hybrid model? Because I have noticed quite a few people are remoting in from their traveled area, or is it going to be an office position in a set place?
That's a really good question. Thank you, Haley, and thank you for being here tonight. It's definitely the type of position where it could be a little bit of both. And sometimes it depends even on what's going on at the house. Like right now over the summer, there's 4 staff that are in at this time. So maybe the managing director doesn't have to be in office all of the time. We have the potential for a new grant that's fingers crossed coming through. So there might even be an additional hire that could be coming up that could then support a bit more of a hybrid position as well too. But to be honest, that would be a conversation with the current team members, just to see that if it worked with everybody's scheduling and it supported everything that was happening at the house. So it wouldn't be something that I would want to make that comment on purely on my own, without bringing in the other team members too for their input with that as well. But that's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm currently on a medical leave, but I've been supporting the office remotely, so it does work.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Haley. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Okay, well, are there any other questions about anything that we heard tonight? Oh, we're all good there too. Wow. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today. We hope this meeting answered your questions. I posted in the chat there, if you decided that you want to join the board, there's a super quick, like 5-question survey. Please fill that out or email me. We'll probably ask for your resume as well, just for our files. So get at me about that, or if you do want to apply for the managing director position and you haven't yet, send that in to administrator@pentictonartscouncil.com right away as well. Let's see. Oh, and of course, please register for our AGM. I'm going to post the Zoom link for that in the chat.
And something we just decided at the board meeting that was previous to this meeting was that I'm going to do a little mini presentation ahead of the AGM, which is just a little bit kind of a summary, a quick summary of the Arts Council, kind of who we are currently, who we're working with, who our funders are, what some of our grants have looked like, some of the current projects that we have too. So that will be ahead of the AGM, and then you would just sign on a little bit earlier, but we'll update the information on the website and then everybody can see it there.
Perfect. Yeah, that'll be a lot of great information, a little bit of history. I mean, we have been around for over 60 years. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to know and learn about. So I put the AGM registration in the chat there. So please register. And if there aren't any other questions, I guess I'll see everybody on August 24th. Thank you for coming, everybody.
And a special thank you to Patricia for her wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. We're so looking forward to working with you on this project. If there was one little gift I could give the Arts Council before going, it's this review. So we can actually know, what does the community think that we're doing and what should we be doing and how can it all work? So thank you so much for working with us on this.
Thank you for bringing me in. I'm really looking forward to it. It was great to meet people here tonight, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Have a great night, everybody.